We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the lands on which this podcast is recorded. We pay our respects to the elders and their descendants who continue in a long tradition of cultural and spiritual connections to country since time immemorial. We acknowledge the First Peoples and their continuing custodianship of the lands on which we work and live. We recognise their struggle and honour their contributions to current and future generations. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to the Reconnection Revolution. I'm your host, Celeste Halliday. In a world that often encourages us to play safe and stay small, we go deep and explore the big questions, the daily joys and chaos of life, and everything in between. Our goal? To help you find your spark if you feel like it's been dimmed, and ignite you if you're ready to create a reconnection revolution in your own life. Wherever you're at right now, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Hello and welcome to the Reconnection Revolution podcast. Joining me today is the ever delightful Lisa Keenan, who is the Executive Director of Mecca Empower and founder of Nightingale. Lisa and I have continuously come in and out of each other's orbits. We were just working out for over 20 years, which is both impressive and terrifying simultaneously. And today we're talking, as always, all things connection, disconnection, reconnection.
Well, what a perfect way to sum up our involvement over the years. The reconnections all the time,
Absolutely.
whether it's at the gym or the high street or at work.
Or, yeah, literally everywhere. We keep bumping in, don't we? Yeah.
So good.
So the first question we love asking our guests is, what lights you up?
Such a great question. It would be the opportunity to be creative,
Yes.
to be honest.
Yep.
And I think that comes in, for me, in many forms. It's the opportunity to be creative in my own little environment, whether that's in my dress sense or in my home or in reading great books or watching great films or pottering around in my garden. And especially at work, whether that's problem solving or writing, which I do a lot of in my work, or just interacting with other people who have a different point of view. And I feel very, very lucky that I get to do all of those things a lot, which is really good.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because your most recent role with Mecca Empower is about just that.
Yeah.
And giving voice to people who don't necessarily have access to be able to speak loudly themselves. Tell me, how did you get into it? Because I'm fascinated. How did they manage to get you? And what do you love about it? And what are the big goals of Mecca Empower?
It's a complete gift, to be honest. It's such a real privilege to be able to step into a role doing something where I am learning so much every day and have an opportunity to be exposed not just to an incredible business, but also to a group of individuals and social change makers who are all in their own way so entrepreneurial and solving very big problems very creatively. So Mecca 25 years ago was born out of a desire really to disrupt an industry, the beauty industry, which was at the time run for women but by men.
Yes.
So, and what's been wonderful is that over 25 years, Mecca's created an environment where women can come in and shop as customers and be centred as females, and where women can work together and thrive. So if we look at the business today, of our sort of circa 8,000 team members, the vast majority, more than 95% of them are women. Of our almost 5 million customers, again, the vast majority are women. And so as an organisation that has been built by women for women, it felt inconceivable to us to stand by and allow another 132 years to end gender inequality, for us to sit by and let that happen. And so really that was the genesis of Mecca Empower. The program in itself has been around for since 2017, and we first invested in education as being a primary lever to address inequality, and did that really fantastically in collaboration with some amazing organisations, both here in Australia as well as in sub-Saharan Africa. And as of the end of last year, we had supported about 10,000 young girls to finish secondary school, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But, we realised that education is just one of the things that impacts a woman's ability to thrive.
Yeah.
And so what we then did was spent almost 12 months going through a process of real sort of strategic evaluation, partner evaluation, thinking about how we could best adapt Mecca's business model, which is to back founders and leaders and strategies in long-term win-win partnerships, and how we could pivot that across into a social impact environment.
Which makes absolute sense. Now you've said that out
So now
loud.
we're kind of a curated shop, I guess, of, where you go to Mecca for all things beauty, you go to Empower for all things women and girls and supporting women and girls.
Wow.
So it is amazing. We have a collective of 21 organisations across everything from dealing with people who've experienced homelessness to helping women to start, run and grow businesses to investing in the next generation of AI and breast screening to, it's a really diverse group of people, but most of them are involved in tackling these issues in a really interesting way, in a way that has an opportunity to scale, in a way that has an opportunity to really grow or change the way people think about these things. And it is a privilege just to be part of that group and to think about all of the ways in which we can help them to, be bolder and more ambitious in their vision.
Yeah, and it's almost like an incubator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much.
And the people that you're supporting, the businesses are for women. Are they all by women as well? So do they tend to be female founders?
Yes. So typically the founders or the CEOs are women. We also support an organisation called the Man Cave, which is doing positive masculinity programs.
Absolutely.
And really the goal there, it's systems change.
That's right.
Prevention work,
Yeah.
which is so fantastic. You and I are both mothers of sons,
Yeah.
married to and with wonderful men.
Yeah.
And you think, well, how do we create opportunities and moments for men to be able to step into the roles that we need them to be in if we're all going to thrive together?
Absolutely.
And Man Cave do an amazing job with that. So important.
It is. So I'm really interested in our model when we teach connection. It has 3 parts. The first one, always the most important, is connecting with self. Then connecting with meaning and purpose, and really only then are you able to effectively connect with other people. And I'm thinking about both your journey of figuring out who you were and what was important to you and what was purposeful to you, but also those founders that you're working with who've probably had that same journey, because we really get to meaning and purpose often by what we've experienced, lived experience, what we understand about the world ourselves.
Amazing. I love how you phrased that, and actually I would say that probably both Man Cave and Flourish Girl, Flourish Journey, as it's now called, which is its female equivalent that deal with, young women and non-binary people who are between 13 and 18, how to connect with self, with others and with the community at large.
Yeah,
and that is a skill that, really we only come to as adults.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful that there are programs that are teaching young people how to not always look outside yourself for the answers. The
That's
answers
right.
are usually kind of inside. There are probably 2 things that, I would say that I am. I'm quite a curious person and I'm quite a wholehearted person. So when I
Yes.
decide to do something, I do it
All in.
fully and I really invest in it.
Yes, I've trained at the gym with you, and I would second that. You absolutely do. Hard to keep up with.
I think the other thing is, when you read something or watch something or see something and you get inspired by that learning, that's the beginning of my flywheel. Me learning something new, I then take that on into other conversations with people that open up opportunities for new ways to problem solve or be creative, and that kind of, it starts humming, and I've realised how important that is. And I think that, over the years I've met people, whether they are kinesiologists or doing psychology degrees or just really interested in human beings. And I found that fascinating. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people who are really amazing business people. That's fascinating. Why do people start businesses? What problem are they trying to solve? And I think that whole process, I read a quote by David Bowie the other day that said, aging is this fabulous process whereby you gradually become the person you were always meant to be.
That's great.
And I really feel that is it's so true.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you realise that all of the pieces in your life that seemed very disparate are all building you into the person that is now able to show up in lots of different situations, as the same person with lots of strings to your bow.
It's
and
so true.
I really like that.
Yeah, like we sort of understand ourselves looking backwards and connecting all the dots together. Things, as you said, that made no sense in our journey necessarily. And suddenly there's this cohesive picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your journey, how did you go through the process? Because you've left a country, started over in a new country, lots of big change culturally as much as anything else.
Yeah.
How did you, and what were your big learnings of that process of connecting with yourself?
So I was born in Zimbabwe and had what I would describe as a really fairy tale Wilbur Smith kind of childhood.
Yeah.
It was it was magical. And I realised looking back that, I was completely oblivious to the political environment going on around me. And it was only many, many years later, you recognise yourself in hindsight, that I read and became more aware of the dynamics that were going on and the inequalities in the country that I was born in and was so, proud to be a citizen of. Anyway, I was at 10, blindly oblivious to all of that. I was playing with dolls and running around with my little sister in the garden, and the government changed, and my dad was South African, made a decision to move down to South Africa, which I have to say, Mum and Dad did the most extraordinary job with us kids of making it fun and an adventure. And we had no money, we had no home, Dad had no job, but it was, hey kids, it's an adventure, we're off to buy all the lollies and all the chips that you can't get in South Africa,
so cool.
You can get in South Africa now. So it felt like fun. When I started high school, it felt like a lot less fun.
Yeah.
And I was quite, I still am, I guess, quite a high achieving, well, not necessarily high achieving, just a trier. Like I'm a trier.
Yeah.
I try really hard at everything. And I tried really hard at school, and I'd been getting good grades, and we moved to South Africa, and I was learning a new language, and I was in a school where there were a lot of kids who, were bilingual, and I was like, oh my God, I'm really starting from behind the eight ball here, and this is not good. So I think my sense of myself and who I was and what I was good at and my confidence was really knocked. And it took me a long time to figure out how to get that back again. In fact, I would say my teenage years, I can so identify with young people who just walk through that wilderness where you just go, am I ever going to find someone who accepts me and just loves me for me? And
Absolutely.
I would say that I had a pretty unhappy teenage time, and the place where I really found comfort and solace and friendship was in a dance studio. So I was an early adopter of aerobics and
I can see that.
Spent a lot of time teaching aerobics and doing aerobics, which sounds so naff and so corny, but really gave me something to get out of bed for, and I was so grateful for it. Anyway, I wound up studied accounting at university. Again, you kind of go,
tell me how that
am I
happened?
connected to myself or what? And I did it because, the classic, my dad had been an economist, and I was on a scholarship to university, and my choices were pretty binary. You could either be an accountant or you could be an engineering student. I was like,
either way,
don't really want to be either, but Dad did this, so how bad could it be? Anyway, turns out it was pretty bad. I got so distracted in my first accounting lecture that I kind of missed the crucial thing. I'd never done it before. Crucial thing about the ledger, and I was like, oh Jesus, this is going to be really hard. Anyway, things did not get much better, and I sort of struggled on through there, and then went to the UK and sort of I don't know how I managed to do this, but I finished my accounting degree and finished a postgrad accounting degree, and then
oh my gosh,
found myself in an investment banking environment in London in the early 90s, which was just fun, crazy.
Yeah.
Lots of South Africans, Australians, Kiwis, and a whole lot of Essex boys and geezers, which was really fun and another whole eye-opener. And I was by myself, and I was 21 years old. I didn't know anyone. I was living with a guy who had dated one of my friends at uni in a council flat in Battersea with like 9 people, and we had bath slots, and I had like 10 minutes from like 6:15 to 6:25. I had to be in and out and have cleaned the bathroom. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was really good fun. And I wound up meeting my husband in that environment.
That's how you met.
Yeah. We were babies, and he is probably the person who's had more of an impact and an influence on my life than really anyone else.
Yeah.
We've grown up together,
Yeah.
and he's still the person that I value his opinion probably more than anyone else's, which is still good. We're going strong 25 years later.
Yeah.
So I then fell into sort of a new career in financial communications, and I met one of my best friends who's also my business partner. And she was doing this job, and I was like, God, that sounds so much better than what I'm doing. How do I get involved in that anyway? So I got myself an interview at this firm and wound up joining a firm called Brunswick, which was just a fantastic learning ground and full of people who were, they just had a different worldview and a different point of view, and they'd come from different backgrounds, and it was a fantastic training ground. And it was where I think I learned that sometimes the best way to learn is just to be curious and listen and absorb and be a sponge and, ask questions and throw yourself into opportunities. If you get a chance, if you get an opportunity, just go for it. So I loved it, and I learned heaps, and it was great. And then...
Third country change, by the way, we're talking so far.
Change.
So we're on country number 3.
Yes,
yep.
Which I, again, loved. And then my husband decided that he had enough of sort of fannying around in London, and he wanted to come home and get a real job. And I was like, oh, okay. That doesn't sound like a part of my plan, but anyway. So we wound up compromising and taking a year out and going backpacking, which we went all around, South America and New Zealand, and got married in South Africa, and then ended up in Melbourne because we didn't know anyone, and we figured that it would be an adventure that we could have together. Instead of, moving into one or other of our
home
previous
turf.
worlds.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to, again, find a job that led me to Foster's, which is where we met.
That's right.
And then from there, I started my own business, which is Nightingale Advisors, which is a corporate reputation and now executive search business, which is amazing, and that's been going for 16 years, incredibly. I joined the board of the Australian Leukemia and Lymphoma Group, which is, again, a cause very dear to my heart, very personal links there. And that is an amazing research organisation with some super smart people all trying to do something to change the trajectory of people with blood cancer.
Yeah.
And I think that piqued my interest in, not-for-profit
foundation
type work. And then Joe Horgan, Mecca's founder and creator, approached me about taking on Mecca Empower. And, that thing where your tummy just gives you a great big screaming, yes, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's been such an incredible ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such an incredible journey, so many countries, so many changes, such different cultures that you've been in. And I have a theory that I'm still working on, which is when you've lived overseas and you've had that whole having to adapt, I think you become, one, expert at figuring out how to fit into different places, which can, as Brené Brown would say, make you kind of like a chameleon and not necessarily true to yourself. You're kind of hustling for your worth to fit in all the time, but not necessarily. And also it makes you an expert translator.
Yeah.
Whether the language is different or not, you're culturally translating all the time. You're trying to understand nuances that when you've been in the one place your entire life, you don't necessarily have to do that work. So I'm wondering at which of those points you were the least connected or the most disconnected with yourself. And when I met you, by the time you hit Foster's, you were seemed to be so uniquely yourself and able to be much more your complete self than a lot of the other people there that would fit more within the cool corporate vibe. You were just like a shining flamingo always.
That's so sweet.
In sort of a sea of beige and grey. So I'm so keen to know what happened between those time periods that helped you understand who you were.
I love what you said about, going to different places and learning how to fit in. And I wonder whether part of that is it's less about you adapting yourself to another environment than recognising that in everybody there's core humanity.
That's right.
It doesn't matter where you're from, what language you speak. We all feel something, often the same things, and we've had those emotional experiences that we can identify with. And I think the other thing is you learn how to recognise that your story is just part of a much bigger tapestry of stories. And as much trial or tribulation or supposed hardship as you might have had, there are always other people who've experienced, I don't want to say worse, but they have their own story.
That's right.
And the more of them you hear, the more you realise comfortingly that we're all in it together. I'll never forget, I was on the plane on the way. I bought myself with my hard-earned dosh from about 7 years of working 3 jobs as a teenager and teaching aerobics and being a terrible waitress. I couldn't carry all the cups properly and hostessing and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, I saved all my money and I bought myself a ticket to go to London, one-way ticket because I have a British passport, and I was like, I can't afford a return, so we're just going to have to figure it out when I get there. And I basically had enough money to get me through for sort of a month. In my first weekend, I bought myself a leather jacket from High Street, Kensington.
Of course you did.
And a pair of rollerblades. And then I'd literally done my dough, so I had to get a job. And I remember on the aeroplane, I was thinking about my future and about this sort of, what I was going to do and all that stuff. And I said, I made this promise to myself as the air hostess came round and she, offered me a glass of wine. And I was like, oh, I've really grown up. Okay, I'll have a glass of wine. Thank you very much. And I thought, I'm just going to say yes to every opportunity. I'm just going to be open to whatever life throws at me. I'm just going to let whatever happens. And I think what that did was it let go of this expectation maybe that my community had, that my family had, that I had about what kind of person I was. Yeah. And it was almost like sliding doors moment. In fact, the movie was out around the same time, and I actually got my hair cut like Gwyneth Paltrow
So did I.
the same time. In fact, I've never let it go. I'm still wearing that haircut. But I remember thinking, I'm just going to be open to whatever life throws at me. And in the process of doing that, I think I just let go of everything that I didn't really need anymore. And then I just decided, I don't even know that I decided, but what sort of happened was that I just became more comfortable in my own skin and I had a lot of fun and I met a lot of interesting people and I did stuff that including my first date with my husband, where this random bloke from work bowls up to my desk after we've met at a work lunch and says, oh, hey, I've a friend of mine's a pilot and he's invited me to go to France for the weekend. He's chartered a plane to go to the Champagne region and we've made each other a promise that we'll each invite someone that we don't know. So would you like to go with me?
That is a very cool tactic.
You're right. Don't you reckon? Yeah. Old me would have said, you're a loser, get away from me, I'm going to call the police. But new me said, you seem like a pretty, reputable, nice young man in my head. And I know that a lot of the guys that I love and respect really like and respect you because they work with you for. Yeah, okay, I'm in. I mean, that was the best decision I've ever made.
Absolutely.
And it was such a spontaneous sort of, I'm not saying that everyone should just go out with random strangers and fly on aeroplanes with people that they've never met before. That's probably not the message.
They're not all your lovely husband, though.
However, my point is it was just being open to something that I would previously have shut down immediately. Yeah. And I've learned not to do that. Yeah. And I think that, the other thing that I discovered, or maybe that just happened over the course of that period in my life, was I realised that I only really have one face. Yep. I don't have a work face and a home face and I'm just the one person.
Yeah.
So, you'll remember I used to get told off at Foster's because I'd be wearing strange clothing to work and.
That's what I absolutely loved and admired it and just wanted to be able to be confident enough to do it.
It's just, for me, it feels simpler that way.
Yeah.
And then at least people know what they're getting.
Yeah, but
I know who I am.
But often people really struggle with that. So much of what happens is we're projecting an image at work.
Yeah.
The image that we think looks successful, looks
Yeah.
right. And so much of it is the roles that we've been given,
Yes.
by our family, by the world,
Yeah.
about the shoulds.
Yeah.
I know when I
Be
went
a good girl.
to London, be a good girl. I had this thing about, I'd always been fascinated with hats. At one point in my life, I decided I was going to become a professional milliner. When no one was making hats, I was going to bring it back to the world because I loved hats. And I went to London, and Australia, I might have had a cap in summer.
Yeah.
But when I went to London, I thought, no one knows me here.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen if I wear a hat. And
All
these
the time.
hats became so symbolic for me
amazing.
of being able to create the person I wanted to be and shake off some of the perceptions that I had of myself, So I think these big shifts and choices and brave decisions, often they're also environmental. It's also about who's around you.
And being able to, I just think that rite of passage, whether, the rite of passage becoming a teenager.
Yeah.
And, I can see my 14-year-old going through that rite of passage at the moment. Or, the experience of going away to college or leaving home and becoming independent and flying the coop. I think those are really important to figure out, who am I without all of the structures that have surrounded me and supported me.
Yeah.
But who am I without that?
Yeah.
And can I, actually bring something new to that environment, not just an extension?
Yeah. And I find that it's certainly with me, but also with a lot of clients that I work with, it often comes from a point in time where they've been disconnected. And so what time in your life did you feel that you'd lost touch with yourself, that you were disconnected with who you are and wanted to reconnect and rediscover who you were again?
Yeah. Probably a couple, actually. The most obvious one was, I think, post having my second child. I was in an environment where I wanted to be a mum so badly. And I struggled to become a mum. And so having a baby and having two babies just felt so miraculous. And I couldn't work out why I didn't feel happy, why I wasn't really, and not that I wasn't happy. I mean, I absolutely adored them. But I realised that I was actually quite sick and I wasn't coping very well with, especially being, running a business, being a mum of two small kids, having a husband who had a really full-on job at the time. I couldn't figure out where my spark had gone. And I had so much of my energy just walking out of my body, and it felt like I wasn't getting enough of it back.
Yeah.
And the thing that was kind of interesting is what started happening as I tried to rediscover what that was going to look like. So I got into this really bad internet shopping habit. Oh my God. Whether it was, Coles online or buying baby clothes or buying clothes for myself. And after a couple of months, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. What is happening to me? And my poor husband was like, oh my
What
God,
is happening to
need
you?
to stop right now. Anyway, but what I realised I was trying to do was fill up my need for some sort of creative expression or some sort of identifying what was going on with me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really helped was A, talking to someone about it, B, finding outlets for myself that were about like getting back into nature or doing exercise or, meeting a friend for a walk or, just basic stuff, but that connects you with another human being, connects you with the natural world, which I do think is the very, very best medicine.
Key part of what we teach, absolutely, yeah.
And, and also just being able to sort of reflect on, I'm not okay. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And I need to figure that out. Not just then, all through my life. I think one of the things that I've really valued is the opportunity to become a better version of myself and to lean on other people. If I look back on that time, I think and I've thought about this recently too. I mean, my kids are now, nearly 12 and nearly 15. And they still need you. Whether you've got little kids or bigger kids or, frankly, even kids that are leaving home, they still need you, just in different ways, the way that shows up. And the thing that I think as women especially we're not that great at is allowing ourselves to want more, and we content ourselves with, well, this is what I'm allowed to want now because my family need me or my community needs me, or, I can't take that job, even though it sounds really amazing because it's, I can only work 3 days a week and I can only afford to, childcare for this much or whatever. And I think one of the things that I have realised about myself is I'm midlife now, I'm not afraid to want more. I'm not afraid to want to work more, even when society judges you for it, And I think society does judge you for it. If you are a working mum with little kids, I used to get lots of sort of askance look. Well, who's got your children today? Oh, well, they're with the nanny or the au pair. Including from my family, by the way.
Yeah.
I totally get that because that has been our role, and it is our role. But I think that it's okay to want things for yourself, and it's okay to give yourself time and to give yourself the things that sometimes make you feel good. Because it's a bit like you got to put your own oxygen mask on before you fit the person next to you, kind of thing. And that's kind of what I realise now, that I don't think it would have made any difference if I think I probably did know it before and I wouldn't have done anything different, because it's just how you are in that part of your life. That's the beautiful thing about human experience. You have to experience.
There's the old saying that you cannot be what you cannot see. And it occurred to me, particularly when I unexpectedly, suddenly became a single mum, and there was just me influencing the kids for a period of time. And I had to work, and I had to work hard, for them. And I remember somehow making the mental switch, because I'd always worked, but that they needed to see me lit up, doing work that I loved and was passionate about. And yes, that was for us to be financially secure. And yes, I still wanted to be around for them as much as possible. But if they didn't see me doing that, how did they learn that it's okay to want that for themselves? Yeah. So I think it's a really important lesson for kids actually to see people doing whatever it is that makes them feel more themselves and that they're contributing in some way.
And I think the other part of that, I don't know whether your boys have experienced this, but I know my kids, I think they're pretty happy that I'm in my lane and that they're in their lane.
Absolutely.
And occasionally if I kind of, change the steering wheel and veer into their lane, I get tapped squarely back into mine pretty damn fast.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually been really good for them, because they've learned how to be independent, how to be self-sufficient, how to have, their own lives and their own friendships that I haven't curated, and their own knocks that we talk about afterwards, and we workshop what's happened or how you might, navigate that. I think they have appreciated that, and I have appreciated being able to have something of my own when they have not wanted me around as much more, I think it's important for everyone.
So connecting with meaning and purpose, this new role for you with Mecca Empower is so clearly, from my perspective, values aligned, the difference you want to make in the world. We often are drawn to causes, and obviously there is a global need for us to change around equality for women, but that's head.
Yeah.
And when we really do something with our whole hearts, it's heart as well as head. So what is it about specifically that cause and that change in the world that's important to you?
I think for me, the thing that is so incredibly inspiring is to meet the women and the men who have not just identified those at a head level, but they've got down into the weeds of understanding how that impacts people in the grassroots. They are working with young women, with young men, with women who have experienced deep trauma or experienced homelessness or have been on the breadline and about to start welfare, and all that's left between them and the dole is this tiny cottage industry that they need to make something of. I think that's so brave. It's so brave, and that's just in our country. And then you get, the opportunities to meet people through some of the organisations that we work with, like International Women's Development Agency or ActionAid, that are working with people in our region, people who are on the ground in Fiji, for the in real time, looking at the impacts of climate change.
Yeah.
And it's women who are coming together, mobilising communities, advising governments, rebuilding after cyclonic events and, earthquakes, doing what women everywhere have always done, which is to care and to take care of others. And I think it's just an incredible, it's very humbling to witness all of that. And then to think about, well, how do we, get more help for those women?
Yeah.
How do we get more people aware of what they're doing? And how do we make it easier for, one of the things that's really struck me, because I have no background in not-for-profits or social impact, one of the things that's really struck me is we as an investment community make it really hard for social impact organisations to do their jobs. We say, we're going to give you some money, but we're only going to give you money to do X, Y, or Z. So then the organisation is faced with this massive dilemma of, well, how do we just keep the kitchen stocked, and how do we pay salaries, and how do we pay rent? When you think about investing in companies and the way the share market works,
we don't dictate what it's spent on.
Strategies, and we back leaders, and we back ideas, and yes, of course, we expect outcomes and returns, but I feel like there's an opportunity to invest in, if we're worried about the capability, if we're worried about the impact, let's invest in helping the systems and the people and the capabilities to be able to bring that to the surface, not make it just exponentially harder for good people with great intentions and expertise and the smarts to be able to do it, to do their job. That's been the heart thing, I think, is just...
It's very fragmented globally and in Australia, how not-for-profits, the social sector, is stitched or not stitched together. And so when you think about system change, you can have 30, 50, 100 individual founder business desperately trying to achieve change they know how to achieve, but might not have the resources or experience, all working separately.
Totally.
And part of what I think you're trying to do is connect some of that up.
Absolutely. And, fascinatingly, within what we call the Empowered Collective, one of the things we're trying to do is a program called Empower Connect, which is literally bringing these CEOs and leaders together in small groups amongst themselves to be able to workshop problems, to be able to say, this is going on in my organisation. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Because as we know, it's really lonely being a leader.
Really lonely.
And many of these organisations do not, they're either grassroots, they're so busy just toiling away trying to keep the lights on that they don't have time to invest in professional development. And, even if they do have opportunities, being able to get time out of your day job or get somebody else subbed in to, release you while you go away on a learning expedition is really difficult. So, having the opportunity through your peers to be less lonely and more connected with other people's experiences and ideas and insights, I think is really valuable. My hope for that program is that in meeting together regularly, in forming those relationships, in exchanging ideas and insights, that those leaders will find opportunities that are genuine and seem like good ideas to them instead of being mandated by us, that they will collaborate, cross-fertilise, and out of that will come something really rich and really joined up. I think there's a lot of fragmentation in the sector that is probably because there's so much competition for funding.
That's right, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the whole principle or premise of that around individual agency with support. As opposed to dictating, actually, we think we know the best way to do this or the way you should do it, that immediately stops people from really creating, from actually them understanding the depth and breadth, and probably what we might reach for would be just a watered-down version.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's the big vision for it? In if I was going to say to you in 10 years' time, in 5 years' time, we were sitting here again, what would my magic wand have created for you?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think, Empower is really the expression of Mecca's purpose for 25 years, and it's the outward expression of that, something that's been happening within this business for a very long time that has now got a structure that can be taken out into community. And what I would love is for it to be the central reason why people choose to work, shop or partner with Mecca over time.
Absolutely.
I think that the second part of that would be around, in effectively co-opting so much of what has made Mecca really successful as a business, which is this genuine long-term win-win collaboration with brands in this very curated way. And many of those brands have started out tiny and have gone on to become global superstars that just genuinely outperform, particularly in this market. That's something that we've looked to replicate, and I hope will potentially show that if we can, as a philanthropic sector, just loosen the brakes a little bit. Let's invest in the ideas and the people and the strategies and the models, and then let's just get out of the way. And I think if we can demonstrate and if we can work in a way that allows the organisations that we are working with to really thrive, and what they tell us at this point, which is only 12 months in, is that it is freeing, it is liberating, it is providing additional flexibility, that there is agency in that, there is something special in that, and that's what we want to build. That's the Empower difference that we want to make, and so that's what I would love to see. I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more organisations sort of unshackled to be able to do that, and a sector that's working together to build that capacity, knowing that we need radical philanthropy to solve some of these big issues.
Radical philanthropy. That's great. I love everything about it. And I think you're right. I think it's one of the sectors where there are so many incredibly smart people, and actually a lot of people leaving the corporate sector because they want to do work that they feel is more meaningful for them in the world. And often the organisations are so hamstrung by structure, process, resourcing, whatever, that it becomes very hard for them to create the kind of change they want to create. So that how that all works and merges more effectively so that we can actually support it, I think is a big place to be looking in the next 5 to 10 years. Connecting with others, it's been the core skill set, who you are, like integral to who you are as a person, that you will just naturally, we saw it when you walked in the room today, you naturally just connect with any human wherever you are, very much on that kind of basis of common ground. What have you learnt about yourself, about connecting with other people that you'd share with people who might struggle or not have the same ease in being able to just create that very real connection?
Funnily enough, I went for a walk this morning with my daughter, and we were talking about this. We were laughing about how she has social anxiety. She's getting much better. We were laughing about how, so often when you are that age and you're thinking that everyone's looking at you or everyone's thinking about you, and what you realise is that actually they're really not. They're not looking at you or thinking about you at all.
Not really interested.
Not at all. And I think for me, the thing is in every interaction, I can remember being in London, sitting as you would have, riding around with London cabbies. And some of the best conversations I've ever had have been with cab drivers or Uber drivers or, people in a park, pushing a swing or, meeting someone when you're walking your dog, and these random strangers that share experiences with you. And you think, wow, I have so much to learn about listening to other people's perspectives. And I think that, we talk a lot about, ethics, and ultimately it's just treat people how you would like to be treated, But I think it's just, show an interest, because you have something to learn. It's not just about what you can give to someone. It's genuinely, you can lift someone's mood just by smiling at them, and you can learn something from every interaction. Everyone has something valuable and you will take something from it.
I think that's a really interesting premise, isn't it? I remember Andrew Denton had a TV show called Enough Rope, and his whole premise was spend a few minutes with anyone hearing their story and you will learn about what an incredible human is and that you know, their journey. Every single person has a story to tell. So he'd have famous people on and then he'd have somebody normal, and often the normal person's story was more compelling than the famous stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, we recently did a collaboration with a magnificent, another Elwoodian, Natalie Mogford, who runs Global Village, and they produce a publication called Story, and it is literally commissioned from real people in their own words, very unedited, and it is a collection of essays, I guess, or blog posts, some long, some short, covering every kind of issue, and it's a moment of reflection or experience. And I loved it because to me it demonstrated the connection between all of us, regardless of your gender, your age, your race, where you've come from. We all have a shared experience that we need to tap into before we can reach any kind of rational connection. We've seen how hard that is to achieve.
Yeah.
But if we can bond here, we've got a better chance of creating homogenous, harmonious societies.
You know, we often talk about technology and how it can be so incredibly disconnecting. And so many people, we're in a loneliness epidemic. So many people are lonely and disconnected. And technology in many ways exacerbates that because we can get that sugar hit of feeling like we're a little bit connected with people on social media, for example, but not necessarily the depth of connection that we get face to face. And part of our belief is that we can find ways to use technology for good, especially good connection. And some of it's storytelling, like a podcast.
Yes.
But also, how do we teach people to use things like social media so that they can broaden their perspective, not narrow it, you know, so that the algorithm's not just giving them more of what they already think and not challenging their view. It's so important to help people to remember that it's a tool and should be used as a tool, and that we have been physically addicted to them, to our devices, and we need to find ways. We talk about being the boss of your own brain, of figuring out how to be more in control of what you get, curating what goes in, as opposed to just taking whatever you're fed. But I have a lot of hope because I see in some of the younger generations in our children's ages such different ideas around race, gender.
Absolutely.
Quite incredible in one generation how much our assumptions that we were brought up with have changed really radically. And I also worry because so much of the interaction is via online, that understanding who I really am when I'm facing you, in conflict with you or in joy with you, I learn about myself. We learn and grow in relation with other people, and it's not the same. No. You can make it the same, you can make it very similar, but that's not how it's set up now. So we know that a lot of young people struggle with much lower, 40%, less empathy than we would have had at their age because they're just not spending real face-to-face time. They're avoiding it. That a lot of them don't like to make eye contact. And that's really concerning, that the whole way our brains are wired is to be in physical connection with another person, and we're actually rewiring ourselves to be apart.
I think there is power in recognising our own agency in all of this.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see, you know, social media is not going away, technology is not going away. And look, technology is great.
Absolutely.
It gives us a lot
Both
of
are
really
great for
good
many
things.
reasons, yeah.
But it's understanding that we don't have to succumb to the way the rules are set up. We can change the rules if we want.
Absolutely.
You know, we actually have more power than we think we have.
Yeah. What would you like to leave our listeners with? What do you think would be advice that you've been given that's great to pass on, or something from your own experience, a lesson that you think somebody else who might be in a tricky place could use as part of that you cannot be what you cannot see idea?
Gosh, the central premise of everything that you're doing, which is about connection, is, you know, as much as you might feel alone, you are never alone. There's always someone. You just have to reach out and ask, and to be prepared to stand there in your, what's that beautiful Julia Roberts quote? I'm just a girl standing in front of the world,
Yeah.
That thing of just putting yourself out there, being vulnerable and actually connecting with someone else, even if it's not in the spirit of asking for help, but just knowing that there are others around you, I think has been hugely important to me and is hugely important to me. The other one is, we have one shot at this. One body, one heart, one mind. Just make the most of it. We don't get a second chance, I think you're never too old to try something new, and you're never too old to experience discomfort. My one lesson that I read recently, which I freaking love because I'm getting to that part of my life, it said, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort.
Oh,
isn't that awesome?
it's absolutely correct.
And literally every day I now think about that and I go, I'm going to do something
deliberately
that is deliberately uncomfortable, whatever that feels like or looks like.
Yep.
And I think that is not that I don't want to get old, but just that every single day I want to feel like I'm
alive.
Alive.
Because I think I often talk about the idea of calcifying as we get older.
Yeah.
And, we just get smaller and harder and more brittle, but we don't have to. And in fact, longevity research shows that the people who live the longest continue to be open to new experiences, new thinking, new ways of doing things. Which president's wife was it that said, do one thing each day that scares you? In a period in the world of the 1800s, she was, a force of nature in the women's movement. And always Eleanor Roosevelt, that's who it was, just couldn't get it. Yep. And it was so much that in a time where, she could have been arm candy, creating real social change by virtue
Still
of
the most
her
valuable
own example.
lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for
catching
having
up
me. I
on
know.
everything
So
and
good.
hearing about Mecca Empower. We'd love to share some links with people so that if they're interested to find out more,
That would
we'll
be
get
so
those from you. But where should people look to find out more information?
Our website, empower.mecca.com, which is a really great tool, fantastic news and links to all of these organisations, and it's a fundraising platform. So every cent that gets donated there goes directly to them. We don't touch it, which is awesome. And the other one, if you want to follow us on Insta, at Mecca Empower.
At Mecca Empower. Great.
Yeah.
Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Reconnection Revolution. We hope today's episode has ignited a spark within you, reminding you of the power of genuine connection. As we wrap up, remember that your support means the world to us. To stay connected with our vibrant community and never miss an episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you've found value in our conversations and stories, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a review and let us know what you loved, what you hated, what you want more of, so that we can empower and inspire more people just like you. Until next time, keep curious, keep questing, keep connecting, and remember, we really are all in this together.